Well, I hope you don't mind. I decided to share another message similar to Adonia. Last week, she talked about a legacy of our founder, Reverend Moon, our true father, and I felt also inspired to want to share a message as well this week. So I don't know what came up for you when you were watching the video, but I've been reflecting a lot on it this week. You know, our founder passed away 11 years ago. And even before that point, I myself personally, even though I grew up in this faith, I didn't have too many opportunities to see him or to interact with him, more or less interact with him. But I do have a handful of thoughts and reflections on the few experiences I do have, and just some things I wanted to talk a little bit about today. When I think of Reverend Moon, our true father, and I remember the times in my life that I was touched by him, one of the things that really sticks out to me is this aspect that I think was fairly clearly portrayed in the video, that was his absolute 100% dedication of his life to God and to humanity. He talked a lot about things that seemed very big, and honestly, I'm still trying to figure some of it out. And he talked about attending God, and he talked about liberating God. He talked about liberating humankind. And besides the things that he talked about and just the way that he lived, I think it really transcended this world in so many ways. I think that even big-minded people have a really hard time to go beyond thinking about, my society, my community, my country, right? There's many, many good patriotic people who love their country and fight for their country, but it's really hard to go beyond that and to think about what are the needs of the world, what are the needs of humanity, what are the needs of God, what are the needs of even people who living in the spirit world today. These are things that he talked about all the time. And he talked about being a global citizen, resolving historical resentments. And it's I think it's going to be a while before we really grasp a lot of the things that he talked about. I think it was similar to Jesus at his time, when he had so many things to share, and the people of his time couldn't understand what he was saying. And even his own disciples were like, we don't understand what you're talking about. And these are the people that were with him day in and day night, day in and day out. Thank you. I was like, that didn't sound right. And even today, we're still trying to sort through some of the things that he talked about. This is a excerpt from Mother's memoir that I've been reading recently, and it kind of hit me a little bit when I was reading it. Everything and everyone loves the sun. Only with the sun can life flourish. The moon, on the other hand, bestows something else. The sun represents splendor, the moon tranquility. When people are far from home, they tend to think about their hometown and long for their parents while looking at the moon, not the sun. I have fond memories of gazing at the moon together with my husband. We watched it with many members during the Korean Chuseok festival, Harvest Festival. And at the first moon of the new year, nonetheless, those moments were rare. My husband and I could not immerse ourselves in such tranquility. After this work is done, my husband would always say, and so would I. After this work is finished and we have a bit of free time, we'll be able to take a break. Over our years of ministry, one would think there would have been brief moments to relax after completing urgent tasks, but for us, free time never materialized. I think that it's really quite an amazing route that we come from. I think sometimes easy to forget or to take for granted our roots. the legacy that they left behind, that our true Father has left behind. And I think that will continue to be a really important part of who we are, not just in the last, decades, but in the years to come, as more and more people become connected to us. It's a root that will continue to give life. And I'm constantly amazed and humbled by it. I know that in my own life, it's not going to look like this. But every time I reflect upon our true Father's life, it always makes me think about my own life. And what kind of life do I want to live? What do I want to leave behind? What difference do I want to make? To live a life that's bigger than myself and my family. And to take this philosophy of living for the sake of others and apply it to my own life and to my own family in some meaningful way. But honestly, it's really hard. It's really hard to find that balance because when we look at Reverend Moon's life, I can't think of a more extreme example of somebody who invested regardless of personal loss or even for his family. They suffered a lot because their parents were never around. And I think that in a lot of ways, they didn't live that way because they wanted all of us to live that way. I think many times when people of vision make a sacrifice, it's because it's something they really believe in. But also it's not because they want all of us to live that way, but in a sense, they were willing to make a sacrifice so that we could stand on that foundation. We're not expected to make those same sacrifices. Yet at the same time, where is the balance? Where is the level of maybe personal dedication or personal sacrifice versus, us investing into the things that matter maybe on a more personal level, or self-care, taking care of our families? Because I know those are important things as well. And I also know that if we do invest into those things, our wholeness and wellness and our families, then that gives us a foundation to be able to stand on to do greater things as well. So it's often difficult to reconcile the two things. But that being said, I can say one thing from my own experience, is that the most difficult times in my life, times of difficulty between myself and my wife, or with myself and my children, or myself and maybe society or the church, disagreements I have, or concepts of the way I think things should be, always stem from myself. They stem from my self-centeredness or my selfishness, me expecting that my kids should be a certain way, expecting that my wife should be there to take care of my needs, or that God or society or the church should be the way I think that they should be, and a frustration when they're not. And, there might be some truth in all of those things, perhaps, but I find that these are often the cause of my greatest struggle. And when I am somehow able to change my heart and change my attitude to one of, what can I do? How can I invest more? How can I care for more for these people or situations in my life? My whole perspective changes. This is from Philippians, I'm going to share this verse. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Self-centeredness and selfishness, putting my own needs first at the expense of others, is so rampant and common in this world. This is how we know this is not God's world. This is not the way God intended for the world to be. It wreaks havoc on marriages. It wreaks havoc on families. It wreaks havoc on anything it touches. It could be your business. It could be the government. When we put ourselves first in front of others, things don't work. Because any relationship where people don't practice this fundamental concept of living for others, putting others' needs first before my own, will be dysfunctional. Any family where parents can't learn to live for their children, and husbands can't live for their wives can't live for their husbands, children don't eventually grow to learn to live for their parents, is going to be really hard. Learning to make relationships work is learning how to live for the sake of others, learning how to put others' needs first before my own. This is something that we've been working on a lot with our children, because I think this is something that we model, right? Of course, as parents, but then teach as well, right? Like fundamental things, like flush the toilet when you're done using it, and clean up after yourselves, and wipe, rinse off your dishes, and these very fundamental things that a lot of if we don't learn when we're young, we take into our marriages and our families and cause a lot of challenges. But even in a family, in order for your family to work, everyone has to be recognizing that, I affect my actions, the things that I do, the things that I don't do, the responsibilities that I take on, or the responsibilities I neglect, they all have an impact on the other people in my home. And that's a fundamental thing that actually a lot of people have never learned. And so in a lot of ways, we have a society where people just leave trash everywhere, right? Because they don't care. That doesn't affect me, easier for me, even if there's a trash. So I often will walk, now that I commute to church, right? I will often walk back and forth between the house and the church, and almost every day there's trash. And it's not even, it was like trash, I wasn't even there the day before, but somewhere in the middle of the night, and it's very common to find broken glass all over the road, trash, just like diapers, clothes, all kinds of stuff all over the road, even though there's trash cans like maybe 10 feet away, and just in a very small, simple example, it's we have a hard time even just practicing a simple neighborly consideration many times as a society. It's very unfortunate. But learning how to live selflessly, learning how to live with consideration for the other people in my home is an important foundation for understanding that my life, whether I recognize it or not, or whether I see it or not, actually affects my community, the people around me, the people who interact with me on a daily basis, and maybe a small way, but we affect the world around us by the things that we do or the things that we omit doing. And Reverend Moon took that to an extreme. And I'll never forget when he used to talk about toilet paper and water, right? Some of you know this. He talked about how, he was very serious about conservation and food and hunger and many, many different things like that he worked diligently, besides being a spiritual leader and starting businesses all over the world and investing into nations and all this, many different things. He was a big advocate for conservation and the environment, and he would talk about how, we use too much toilet paper when we wipe. He said, you should only use one piece of toilet paper, and when you're done with it, you should fold it up and save it for the next time. I'm like, that's just not. The scary thing is, he wouldn't have talked about it if he wasn't doing it. So I guess it's possible, but I don't think it's possible. Anything is possible, I suppose. You get some really high quality toilet paper if you're going to do that. But he took these things to an extreme. That's just one small aspect of many of the things that he talked about and he lived. And I'm really proud to be a part of that. I mean, not the toilet paper thing, but just the general attitude and the mentality and the dedication to God. I know I'm never going to be like that, but if I can just be a little bit like that, if I can take some responsibility in my life to live for others, even 1% of the way that he did, if I can even 1% dedicate my life for God, even if 1% can commit to something beyond myself and my family, then I'll feel like I inherit a little bit of that legacy or that foundation that he laid in his life. And I'd be happy about that. Here's another verse from 1 Corinthians. It says, "But God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it." So this is just kind of a reaffirming the idea that in a family, in a society, in a world, we affect one another, and we should feel that, we should see that. I'm really proud of our, YAMI members, for example, because, they moved into the old parsonage a few weeks ago, and, just in general, even when they were living at the old apartment, it's not easy living together with other people. It's, this isn't your blood family. These are not people that you are part of your family, no matter whether you like it or not. They're people who, you happen to be in the same space with, but you're going to have differences of like cleanliness and differences about like, food and water and how you do things. And it's natural that there will be times where it's hard to get along, but they're learning these valuable lessons about how to live for the sake of others and how to live a public life. And I think it's going to serve them really well in the future. At least that's my sincere hope. That they can, it'll help them to live more successful lives. So, I wanted to share this. I came up with this little diagram that I think kind of illustrated the point that I think that our true Father was often trying to express when he was talking about living for the sake of others, because I think that oftentimes we took it as just, put everything else aside and just live for God, live for others. And there's probably a time and a place for that, but I think that he also many times mentioned the importance of like the divine principle also talks about that there's a whole purpose and there's an individual purpose, and they support one another. And that's right here. All entities have dual purposes. In God's ideal, there cannot be any individual purpose which does not support the whole purpose, nor can there be any whole purpose that does not guarantee the interests of the individual. The infinite variety of beings in the universe form one vast organic body interwoven by these dual purposes. So I think that's represented here. This similar concept to this ikigai, right, concept in Japan, where you find the middle part as the balance of the three things. So at the top we have benefits God, and at the bottom right we have benefits others, And then on the bottom left, we have benefits myself and my family. And I think that if we can find something, it probably looks different for every person, but if you can find something that resides in the middle of those three things, I think, I'm not going to say that's like the end all and be all, but I think that if you can find that, it's going to be a really valuable, like hold on to that. That will be like your gold. But that's just something I made up, so take it or leave it. I'd like to finish with a final quote from Reverend Moon. You might be thinking, Reverend Moon, your ideas sound good, but I'm afraid you are too idealistic. How could a totally selfish world be possible? Unselfish, world be possible. Let's look at the practical side of it. Let me ask you another question. Suppose there is someone who truly loves you, 100% unselfishly. Oh, you are a happy person. You are bubbling with joy because of the knowledge that someone loves you so much. You want to give something back to that person to show that you love him too, isn't that right? Would you be stingy about returning that love so that you discounted 40 or 50% of the amount of love you receive and kept that in your pocket, only returning 50% to him? Or would you like to outlove that person and try to give more love than he gives you? What is your reaction? I know your answer. You want to give more. You want to outlove that person. It is human nature never to be stingy about love. So when there is someone who truly loves you, you always want to do more for that person. You want to make him happier. Do you agree with me? An unselfish deed always brings an unselfish reward. Isn't that so? Your deeds of love will never be lost. When I love with 100% unselfish love, then that love will not only reach its destination, but it will also bring back 100% love, plus interest. Love forms a circular motion of give and take, and each time it brings back more love. So once you begin to live according to God's way here on earth, you are already living in heaven. There is no boundaries between the life you live here on earth and the afterlife. This is why Jesus said that the kingdom of God is in the midst of you. You can live in the kingdom of heaven right now, right here. Life for God is living for others, making one great circle of service. For example, I serve my family. My family serves the purpose of the society, and society is the servant of the nation. The nation is the servant of the world. The world, in turn, is to serve God. And God lives solely for you and me, for his children. I thought there was more, but that's it. So I think that also reaffirms that circle that I made, that there is also a process, a ladder, that we don't just serve God, but we through serving our families, and through serving our society and our community, we build the foundational blocks to be able to build a healthy society that serves God. And like True Father said, God lives for us. He created us because he wanted to. So we are what God lives for. And I think that that's something really beautiful that our True Father brought to us that I don't think that anyone else has ever expressed or revealed. So anyway, there's so many things. And I'm sure that for each of you who have been in the church for a long time, maybe there's different aspects of True Father's life that you really connected to, that you really understood, or that touched you. But for me, this is a big one. And not to neglect the others, but maybe next year we'll touch on something else. So please join me in prayer. Our dearest Heavenly Parent, thank you for this day. Thank you for all brothers and sisters who came here today. And especially at this time, we really want to commemorate and remember our True Father who gave his life and more, maybe 100 lifetimes worth for a normal person, to you and to this world and to all the people of this world. I pray that we can not only remember him, but we can, in our own lives, commit to carrying on his legacy in our lives, in our families, in some way. We know that he doesn't expect us all to be like him exactly, but I do believe that each and every one of us can take some aspect of his life, some aspect of so many things that he invested into and poured his heart into in this world, and adopt something for ourselves and our families that we can that we can invest into, that we can give our life for, Heavenly Parent, so we can all be connected in one heart, Heavenly Parent, not just in a belief, but connected in heart through our sincere, heartfelt efforts. And I just thank you that we could have had the blessing and the honor of knowing him in his lifetime, which, people coming from here on will not have had that privilege. And we are really blessed people, and we thank you. And I offer this prayer in my name, Michael and Donia Hendrick, a blessed angel family. Amen and adieu. Thank you.